Hello, Tech fans, and welcome in to episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, originating from TSL's high-tech studios in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. We've got a busy but great show planned for you today as we get you prepared for Virginia Tech's season opener this Saturday against North Carolina State. It's all coming up on the Tech Sideline Podcast that gets started right now. And with that, we welcome you back in episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Whether you're watching live on Facebook, watching archived on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcast, or on Stitcher, we are so glad that you could join us today as we record on Wednesday, September 23rd. We've got our managing editor, Chris Coleman, with us, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, the best producer in the land. He is Malcolm Stewart, and I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes. Gentlemen, great to be with you. Good morning. Chris Coleman, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Excited to finally be, we think, playing a football game.
Excited to have some game content to grind out, right?
Yeah, I'm really hoping I don't write my game preview today for nothing. Like, once I get that preview written, you better play. You better play.
I hope for your sake, too.
Take that mic and pull it up a little. There you go.
I hope that gets out on the website, too. Will, I know you're hoping that we have football this weekend, right?
Yes, because I think we're all going to go insane if we don't. And you know, we're going to talk about it here in a minute, but I think that I'll put that comment aside. We'll wait until we actually talk about chances to play and all that. So a couple of house cleaning items I wanted to go through before we get started. I submitted the podcast to Amazon Music. So Amazon Music has added podcasts, and they emailed me and said, do you want to submit your podcast? And I said yes, and I don't know if it's up there or not. It takes a while for them to verify that I can actually do that and all that. So face masks that we're wearing today, I want to thank Hal Byers for sending those to us. So appreciate it, Hal. And we got a shipment of grit gear. Finally, we got it in. We got new hats and we got some T-shirts. I got a T-shirt sitting over here next to me. We'll get into those guys a little bit later. And this very cool shirt that I'm wearing from Campus Emporium, we'll talk about that a little later as well. And so we're just basically going through the sponsors and everybody else. So shout out also to the Southeast Regional Training Center. And so let's segue into talking about Jonathan Fisher.
Of course. This week and every week, the Tech Sideline Podcast is presented by the Fisher Law Firm, Virginia's trusted DUI and traffic defense firm, dedicated to defending individuals charged with traffic-related offenses. The Fisher Law Firm handles cases throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, and to date, the firm has defended tens of thousands of people charged with moving violations. For a free consultation, call anytime, day or evening, toll-free. 1-800-680-7031 is the number. That's 1-800-680-7031. Or email the Fisher Law Firm at info@fisherlegal.com.
So, thank you, Jonathan. And today I woke up with a song in my head like we do almost every day. And so I thought we would revisit song lyrics because we haven't done song lyric in a long time. I think this one's probably pretty easy. Might even be in Chris Coleman's wheelhouse. I'm not going to say how old Chris was when this song came out, but he would have been listening to popular music back then. Let's just put it that way. So the lyric is, I could tell she liked me from the way she stared and the way she said, you missed a spot over there. Don't blurt it out.
I don't know it.
You don't know it?
No.
I could tell she liked me from the way she stared and the way she said, you missed a spot over there.
I'm still waiting for the day I nail one of these.
I mean, I'm sure lyrics. I know the song.
You do.
I don't like. I like a certain small little section of music that I really, really like.
Well, we did Blink 182 lyrics for you
one
time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we have a trivia question today, right?
We do. Let's get to that later. So have you got it marked down to get to that later on?
I do. We can get to that a little bit later.
Yep. There are no prizes. When I was a kid growing up reading comic books, Marvel Comics used to do a thing they called a no prize. And if you caught an error in one of their comic books, they would talk about it Stan Lee used to do a thing called Stan Lee's Soapbox in every Marvel Comics, and he would talk about just stuff. After a while, it turned into him pimping products and new product lines and things like that. But when he first started it, he would actually talk about stuff. And I remember reading a random early 1970s comic book where he said something like, "Oh, I was speaking to students at Virginia Polytechnic University the other day." And I was just like, wow. So he made an appearance at Virginia Tech in the probably early 70s. So anybody lurking on Facebook can tend to be an older demographic. If you were there when Stan Lee was visiting Virginia Tech, let us know about it. So also, if you know the lyric, let us know about it. And Malcolm, so keep an eye out for those things.
So we'll have the song lyrics and the Facebook comment section. Of course, your questions throughout the podcast. And a little bit later, we'll get to a trivia question, which we'll talk about towards the end of the show. So
yeah, nothing major, just something I noticed this morning.
Episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Again, it's game week. Virginia Tech hosting North Carolina State this weekend. Let's go ahead and dive right into it. We're going to talk about different position groups for Virginia Tech, a season outlook. We're going to preview the North Carolina State game again, all that and more coming up today. But we begin with this question. So Justin Fuente had his weekly press conference on Monday. He talked about how the Hokies hope to play and that they will not have a full roster. Chris, I asked you this last podcast to start off the show. I'll do it again this week. How confident are you that Virginia Tech plays this Saturday against North Carolina State?
I guess last week I was maybe 50-50, and it kind of seemed like Fuente was that way too. Right now I'm about 75% confident that they play on Saturday. They test 3 times this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They got their – this mask is very hard to control for some reason. They got their Monday tests done, and apparently from everything I understand, they went pretty well. They test again today, and then they test again on Friday. So the further we get through this week, the less likely it becomes that the game is canceled, in my opinion. So yeah, I mean, if I had to bet right now, I would say they will play on Saturday.
Will, how confident are you?
I would echo that. I think at this point, my opinion is that so we're doing Wednesday morning, and they're going to do a test at some point on Wednesday, and they'll get the results back from that on Thursday. Let's assume that today's tests go well. I think at that point, the only thing that would cause Virginia Tech to not play would be getting a position group unexpectedly severely damaged by Friday's test. So to get into, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about today were the testing protocols. And what the ACC requires is that you test 3 times a week, that one of the tests is 48 hours after your most recent game, within 48 hours of your most recent game. And once Tech starts playing, that will be the Monday test. And then you have another test during the week for Virginia Tech. That's Wednesday. And then there is a test on the day before the game, which in Virginia Tech's case will always be Friday. Every game's scheduled for a Saturday this year. And that test, the day before the game, is done by an independent testing group, an outside group. It's not done by the schools themselves. So you get the results of those back on Saturday morning, and then you make a go, no-go decision. And as we talked about on the last podcast, there is an attestation document that the team medical officer, in this case I think it's Mark Rogers for Virginia Tech, will sign, and I think the athletic director might also have to sign it. So they basically huddle on Saturday morning, look at the results from Friday, and make a go, no-go decision.
So if the Hokies are able to play this weekend against North Carolina State, and like you guys said, it's trending upwards right now and looking good. Chris, this is a team that since the UVA cancellation, there have been players in quarantine, there have been players out during contact tracing. What is this week of practice like for Virginia Tech leading up to this game? And how difficult is it for some players that are going to play on Saturday who might not have had a full couple of weeks to practice?
It's going to be very difficult on those players. They might play, but they're not going to be ready. That's just the simple fact of the matter. Practice, Justin Fuente said on Tech Talk Live on Monday, he said practice has been an hour and 20 minutes a day with a skeleton crew. And I can guarantee you they've been doing little to no hitting, because when you don't know who you're going to have available for a game already due to contact tracing or COVID or whatever, you do not want to compound the matter by getting everybody else hurt. Yeah. So, in my opinion, Virginia Tech is probably physically not going to be ready to compete at a high level this Saturday. We'll talk about this more later, but it's very possible that it just doesn't go well for Tech because they're not going to be ready. I mean, look what happened to Navy in their first game when they hadn't hit anybody. It took Navy 6 quarters to be ready. Like, they were losing at halftime this past weekend. They finally got it in gear in the second half and won. That's right.
Yeah, the big comeback against Tulane, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not. Virginia Tech has certainly done more hitting than Navy did, of course. They didn't do any contact drills at all. But, Virginia Tech has had so few players available that I seriously doubt they've done any hitting or scrimmaging or anything like that. But they've done past skeletons. They've done conditioning, things like that, but it's not football.
A lot of film study, that kind of thing. Your hope is that with all that being true, that that the start may be a little rough, but that the guys pick it up and get into the flow by, hopefully at least halftime, So that's kind of our mindset going in.
Well, and the quarterbacks have a lot of experience going into the season opener. That's where we begin as we take a look at each position group here on episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. We're going to go around each position group, get you prepared for the season opener. Then we'll talk about North Carolina State and what the Wolfpack bring to the table a little bit later in the podcast. So starting with quarterbacks, we spent a good amount of time last week talking about Braxton Burmeister and Hendon Hooker. There will be a quarterback rotation. You've got Quincy Patterson in the mix as well. When you look at this quarterback room, how confident are you that this group is going to be able to lead the offense this year?
Well, we've said from the very beginning that it's always good to have multiple quarterbacks who are capable of helping you win. That's certainly true this year. I think it's, without saying too much, it's going to be certainly true in week 1. That Virginia Tech has good quarterback depth. It's very, very important this week. I'm good with that group as a whole. People worry about Quincy Patterson's development. I don't think there's very many third-string quarterbacks in the country as good as Quincy Patterson. When you look at it that way, that's a good thing, isn't it? I've heard NC State is not happy with their quarterbacks. I know Hoffman played fairly well.
He played okay,
against Wake Forest, but I think the success he found in the passing game was due to the fact that they rushed for 270 yards, and their running backs were so effective. And I also don't think Wake is any good at all. So I actually think that Quincy Patterson would start for Wake, or excuse me, for NC State. Right. So I feel good about Tech's quarterbacks this year. I sometimes worry about who they're going to throw the ball to, but as far as the quarterbacks themselves, I feel fine. Feel really good about them.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll go ahead and put it out there. Because it's starting to make message boards and social media and that kind of thing. The rumor is that Hendon Hooker will not be available, and that Braxton Burmeister will get the start, and I'm fine with that. You ask about this quarterback group being able to lead this team. The way I would phrase it is, I feel comfortable that the coaching staff can come up with a good, effective game plan for whoever is the starting quarterback. I mean, they almost beat Notre Dame on the road with Quincy Patterson last year. This coaching staff can coach. And we have heard, and I think we've said this on the podcast, that Hendon is ahead in the passing game, that Burmeister is better in the running game. And that's saying something, because Hendon's pretty good in the rushing game. It's not like he's Ryan Willis was not good in the running game. And
Ryan Willis could run, but he wasn't good in the running game.
He could not execute the read option well or consistently. Whereas that's not true of Hendon Hooker. So to say that Braxton Burmeister is better in the rush game, that's encouraging. And I think that whoever they have to put out there Saturday, I think that they can adjust the game plan. They don't have to adjust the offense, as we've talked about, just the game plan. So I
know it's tough to predict how the rest of the season is going to go. I know towards the end of the podcast, I'm going to ask you guys for a prediction of the season record. And
we're not going to give it to you. But go ahead.
There's your preview. When you look at this quarterback room, though, specifically with Burmeister and Hooker, when the season is over, what quarterback do you think we're talking about more come November, December?
Wouldn't shock me if we were talking about them equally. And here's the thing. What if Burmeister goes out there and absolutely lights it up?
Yeah.
I mean, tears it up. What if he goes out there and completes 70% of his passes for 300 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns? And he's good in the running game, right? Like, Hooker's good, but he was never that good last year, right?
Yeah.
He never put up those kind of numbers. So, I don't know. I hope Burmeister does a great job. I'm not going to judge him if he doesn't. I wouldn't judge Hendon Hooker if he didn't do a good job this week. I've heard Hooker will be available. They're just not going to. I don't think they're going to play him because, I mean, he comes back like on Thursday or Friday, I think, and that's just not enough time. If he's been out 10 to 14 days or whatever, he's lost some timing with his receivers, and he just hasn't been there on a daily basis to stay in rhythm, and that's very important for a quarterback.
It is. Yeah.
So if you feel like your quarterbacks are pretty even, which Fuente clearly feels, then you start the one who's been practicing. But yeah, I mean, we could conceivably be talking about either one of them at the end of the year, and that starts this week, man. If Burmeister goes out and lights it up, there are going to be a lot of people calling for him to be the starter, and at the same time, if he doesn't play well, there are going to be people saying, "Oh, he shouldn't be playing at all." Like Hooker should, once he's back, should get 100% of the snaps, and that won't be a fair assessment because I don't think you can judge anybody on this weekend's game because we don't even know who Braxton Burmeister's been throwing to in practice. If they've had a skeleton crew as far as the whole team goes, I'm going to imagine that each position is its own little skeleton crew. What was he at 3 wide receivers in practice? 4? I mean, can they even run a full offense at times?
We have heard that the running back group got a little thin at some point, that they were down to 3 guys. So yeah, to your point. But Chris is always making the point that whoever the quarterback is, this coaching staff is good at getting good production out of him.
Right.
The one exception was Ryan Willis at the beginning of last year. Not really going well, but this coaching staff got good production out of Josh Jackson. Mm-hmm. A guy who
Josh is a mediocre talent.
Yeah, and Josh had a good guy. We like Josh, but he went to Maryland and was pretty bad last year. After a hot start, he tailed way off. I looked at his stats. It was bad.
Yeah.
So these guys can get good production out of their quarterbacks.
They get them, and that goes back to when Fuente was at TCU, when they were at Memphis. Like even that guy that started for them. His first year at Memphis, the guy had no talent at all.
Yeah,
and
quit football the year after that. I think
he's a lawyer now. I know that, but the guy somehow they got him to only throw 3 interceptions all year.
Yeah,
I mean it was amazing. So whatever issues Willis had last year was a Willis thing because Willis is the only quarterback in their history to not get better, to not improve.
Well, he had injury issues that I think he was hiding from the coaching staff. I think that
certainly could be part of it. Yeah.
Well, Ryan Willis was a Kansas Jayhawk, and the Hokies have another transfer from Kansas. He is listed as the starting running back on the depth chart as we transition from the quarterback room to the running back room. He's Khalil Herbert, graduate student from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The running back depth chart right now is Herbert, Blackshear, and then the Jalen Holston, and Keshawn King. Will, when you look at the depth in this running back room, is it fair to say this is the most depth that Justin Fuente has had at running back since he's been here at Tech?
Going in the season, I think so. Well, I don't know. Let me qualify that. So I like Herbert's size, 5'9", 212. That's shades of Stephen Peoples, who I don't remember Stephen's exact height and weight, but
yeah, similar body styles, I would say.
Yeah. And they list Raheem Blackshear second at the running back spot, but we think we're going to see him in the slot a lot. We think he's going to move around a lot. So do you really qualify that as running back depth? I don't know. Jalen Holston has not really been able to stay on the field for extended periods of time due to injury. Keshawn King, we don't know how much we're going to play him. He came back light. He came back at 175. So just because you have a lot of names listed at the position doesn't mean you have a lot of depth. And we'll make that determination once we start watching games and see who they rotate in.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of names. I completely trust Khalil Herbert, and I completely trust Raheem Blackshear, even though I've never seen him play in a Virginia Tech uniform. Holston has been hurt his entire career. He was a guy with a good offer list, was a good recruit, but he's been hurt his whole career.
Yeah.
Keshawn King was 180 pounds last year, Reported back in August at under 170 and is now back up to 175. Let's face it, this is a guy who missed the Notre Dame game last year because he skipped practice to hang out with his girlfriend. That was the heavy rumor. Yeah. And now he comes back at the age of 19 years old, and he's lost weight. And you should not be losing weight when you're 19 years old if you're doing things right. So Kashawn's got to show me a little more that he's dedicated to being a big-time college football player. I think he's got a lot of talent. I don't know that the rest of it's there for him to find his ceiling, so to speak.
I think that's fair. It sounds harsh, but I think
it sounds harsh, but it is what I'm not telling. If I was his coach, that's what I'd be telling him. Right. I'm not going to say anything about a player that I wouldn't say to them if I was their coach. So to me, it's an unproven group. Now, I do think with Herbert and Blackshear, I think both guys are better than any running back Tech has had in the Fuente era. And I liked Stephen Peoples. He was a good player. Trayvon McMillan was good sometimes. But I do think the top two are better than anybody we've had during the Fuente era. But the overall depth past those guys, I don't know. I think it's fairly questionable.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about Khalil Herbert for a quick second because I feel like we've talked a lot more about Raheem Blackshear, and rightfully so, what he can do on offense, being versatile running back and receiver. But here's a guy who ran for nearly 2,000 yards at Kansas in his career. Is he somebody who could be a 100-yard rusher, you think, in this offense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I saw the question asked on social media, will Virginia Tech have a 1,000-yard rusher for the first time in a while? Who was the last one? Did McMillan?
Was McMillan in 15?
Did he 2015, but not 2016?
Correct.
Yeah. I think we're gonna have to swap these masks out during the break.
They keep falling off.
They certainly look good.
They look great. They just don't. If you keep them on for a long amount of time, they don't stay on top of your nose.
Well, I didn't shave, so as it slides down, it catches on the beard and stays there. There's no sliding up here; it's all sliding down. 100 yards a game, sure. It's that hasn't been how Fuente rolls, but as Chris pointed out, I'm not sure he's had this available at the top two slots.
Yeah, a lot of times he's had guys. He's played a lot of guys because nobody separated themselves to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
Stephen Peoples got a lot of carries. Stephen Peoples would have been a 1,000-yard rusher, in my opinion, if we hadn't been behind by 30 points in a lot of games and we started throwing the ball all over the field. Yeah.
So
Peoples had a good year.
So if you wind up with Burmeister getting all the snaps or most of the snaps on Saturday, and you wind up emphasizing the rushing game more, you might wind up with a running back with 100 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't speak to 1,000. I don't know about that.
I can't wait to play Boston College with these running backs because Herbert rushed for like 200 yards on him. And then Raheem Blackshear, didn't he catch like 9 passes for 160 or 70 yards against him?
All right.
So we couldn't do anything against BC last year with the running back position. So we just signed the 2 grad transfers that destroyed them.
Yeah.
Great.
So the running back room is certainly going to be a lot of fun to watch, especially with those two. The receiving core, there's a lot of talent there, of course, headlined by Trey Turner. You've got Tavion Robinson. But with the Jaden Payute injury, we talked about on the last podcast some guys who can step up. I want to focus on Trey Turner for a second. Last year it felt like it was Turner and Hazelton at the top part of that wide receiver depth chart. It feels like this is Trey Turner's receiving core. This is his unit. How do you think he will react to being the number one guy on Tech's receiving core?
Hopefully he reacts well because he's going to have to, because besides him and Tavion Robinson, there's just a whole lot of unknown here. Evan Ferris, grad transfer from Kansas. I think he can be a solid player, but I don't think he's like a special talent or anything like that. He can fill a role. Chenga Hodge, I think, is good, but he's still unproven. Daryl Simmons is on here, but we hear Simmons is hurt and is going to miss the first part of the season.
Yeah, he's listed second at one of the behind Turner.
Yeah, now Turner was a 4-star recruit. Turner picked Virginia Tech over Florida State and some other major programs. So, and I thought he was great as a freshman 2 years ago. Last year, I don't think I'd say he took a step back, but he didn't take the step forward that you would have expected, and it's time to see that step forward this season.
I think Trey really likes playing the game. playing the game of football. I'm not there in practice, of course. I can't speak to his leadership capabilities. I just know what I see from the outside. And from the outside, he seems to have fun playing the game, and he seems to be a guy that the teams can rally behind. And so and then you start thinking about, well, who plays where? Tavion Robinson can, of course, in the slot, and he has been outside some this fall, I think, also. Trey Turner, outside. Didn't he play in the slot some as a freshman, Chris?
Oh, yeah. Trey, that was one of the most impressive things about his freshman season. He was so versatile.
Yeah. And Caleb Smith is listed as a starter at one of the outside spots. And if you want to go 4 wide, you can bring James Mitchell out, So I think as long as they have guys available and they don't suffer injuries, they've got enough pieces and they've got enough talent to be productive.
Mitchell played, I forget the exact number, but I put it in an article that will be, I guess, released.
Wasn't it a couple hundred plus?
It was like 250, 270 snaps in the slot last year.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't expect, like, Mitchell's 6'3", so you expect him to be an outside receiver, right? But in reality, when he wasn't a tight end, he was a slot receiver for Virginia Tech last season.
So let me throw this out there. Look for, let's go back and look at the running back depth chart. Look for Raheem Blackshear on the wheel route.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So look for that one.
Look for him on the wheel route and look for the pop pass.
Yes. Things that, man, those plays, if you pick the right time to run them, just destroy defenses. You don't want to overuse them so that the defenses are ready for them. But
no, of course, Charlie Wiles is on the Charlie Wiles and Brian Mitchell are telling the rest of their staff the exact same thing.
Remember the pop pass against Wake Forest last year? I believe that was Terrius Wheatley.
It was his only play of the season,
and then he fumbled at the end of it, right?
It was like a 50-yard gain.
Yeah.
All right, so real quick, wrapping up with the receivers. So we talked about, of course, Trey Turner and Tavion Robinson. Give me one receiver's name out of the rest of the group that we just talked about that we think can really develop into a very productive player this year for Tech at the receiver position.
I would say Changa Hodge. I'm sorry, is that one of the names you said?
Yeah, no, okay. Absolutely. I said besides Turner and Robinson.
He's the one out of this group, besides those two, that I would expect long-term over the season to have the biggest impact. I don't know. It's hard to say how ready he'll be because, he was a transfer. He didn't start practicing until, I don't know, mid-August probably.
Yeah.
And then who knows who's been out and who hasn't. Like, I could assume that he's been there every day, but I could be that assumption could be wrong. Right?
Yeah, Virginia Tech quit sending photos for they were sending us what are called pool photos that Dave Nagel was taking, and they were distributing to the media because media was not allowed in to take photos at all. And they sent us a lot of photos at first, and then that stopped about 2 weeks ago, which sounds fishy and conspiracy theories type stuff. So, and I think some of the video and pics they have been running are old stuff. I think they're kind of trying to hide who's there and who's working out and all that sort of stuff.
But, my guess would be Changa Hodge.
So I'm looking at Caleb Smith, and I was mystified that Caleb Smith, once Damon Hazelton came back last year, Caleb Smith just disappeared. Mm-hmm. I'm not a super savvy football observer, but he's got good size. He's listed at 6'2", 221. I thought his skills were good, and then when Hazelton came back, boom, Smith disappeared. So,
obviously Damon Hazelton wanted the ball thrown his way.
Yeah,
I think they were just trying to do everything they could to keep him in the program, which didn't work.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm going with Caleb Smith. Caught 2 touchdowns against Boston College in the opener last year.
He had a really impressive catch for a touchdown in that game.
Yeah. So, all right, so that's the receiving core. Let's go to the tight ends, then we'll get to the offensive line. And gosh, a lot of excitement with the tight end room as well. Dalton Keene leaves, but you've got James Mitchell, the junior from Big Stone Gap, Virginia. And then Nick Gallow, I feel like, is one of the players on offense we haven't talked a lot about, but everyone's always talking about Nick Gallow. Is this the year for him? Before we get to James Mitchell, because we just talked about what he can do on offense, how important is Nick Gallow to this offense, and is he the guy that takes on the Dalton Keene role in the offense this year?
That's a good question. Keene was the H-back, and Mitchell played a completely different role last year, even though they're both listed as a tight end. So who does play the Keene role? I would assume Mitchell continues on and kind of a similar role to what he was last year, and Gallow would take over that H-back role. That's my assumption. Virginia Tech used him in the run blocking situations last year, played over 100 snaps. Didn't really use him in the passing game at all.
I think they tried one pass to him.
Yeah, and UVA, who had 3 weeks to prepare,
They were parked all over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yep. So I'm anxious to see what kind of steps forward he's taking in the passing game, because I remember I asked a staff member before last season, I said, how many NFL tight ends you got? Expecting him to say 2, and Keene and Mitchell, and he said 3. And the third he was talking about was Gallow.
Yeah.
Like, Gallow had only been practicing for a few days at that point, and they already absolutely loved him. So, yeah, I expect he's going to play a big role, no question. This is a position that could get thin if somebody gets hurt or somebody goes out with COVID or contact tracing.
Who's next? Dulius?
Drake Dulius.
Yeah.
Right. And then Pennix would be fourth, and Pennix is a true freshman from France who didn't get here because of travel limitations until well after practice began.
I got the urge to blurt out, Sacre bleu. I'm going to have to resist that urge for however many years Wilfred's here.
Oh, man. So
Sorry,
yeah.
I kind of derailed the podcast.
So basically, if either one of these guys gets hurt or goes out for any reason, it gets pretty thin.
Yep.
Although I should probably have more confidence in Dulius in that. Remember, they tried to play Dulius as a true freshman in 2017.
Early in his career.
They did play him in Boston College because they thought he'd be a good red zone threat, and then he immediately got hurt, so they put a medical red shirt on him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Not really anything I can add to that, although I see Nick Gallow as more of a traditional tight end until we see him otherwise. That's
right. I mean, it seems like he would be that way, but like there's really only 2 positions in a Justin Fuente, Brad Cornell, well, besides the offensive line. Like, the H-back position is as realistic as the quarterback position. Like, there has to be an H-back, right?
Yes, that's true. I remember him saying that.
Right.
That's a very important part of his offense.
Yes. So, like, just saying, oh, he's not really an H-backs, we'll play him as an inline tight end. Okay, that's fine, but that means somebody still has to play H-back.
That's a good point.
So, one of those guys has to. I assume it's going to be Gallow.
All right, let's transition to the offensive line, a unit I think we're all kind of excited to talk about. We haven't touched on them a lot since we've been doing a couple podcasts here the last couple of weeks, but here are the projected starters. Left tackle, Christian Darrisaw. Left guard, Lecita Smith. Center, Brock Hoffman. Right guard, Brian Hudson. Right tackle, Luke Tenuta. That means Nestor, Janzi, Hoyt, Cannon, and Tyrell Smith are all listed as backups. So, Will, when you look at this offensive line, what jumps out to you?
When I look at the 10 guys listed in the 2 deep at the offensive line, they've all played a lot of football, depending on how you define a lot. Mm-hmm. Even Austin Cannon played a lot of football.
He's played over 300 snaps in his career, yeah.
And that is super exciting to not be looking – first of all, when all of your starters have significant experience, that's great. But even looking at the backups and not asking the question, who's that? Is that guy a walk-on? You know, and so that's really exciting. And there's probably third-level guys that we're not even seeing on the depth chart who have played some football too. So that's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I remember about a year ago about this point, we're talking about the offensive line and the freshmen and Tenuta and Nestor playing. I feel like we're having a different conversation about the offensive line this year compared to last year.
I was on the radio yesterday, and I was asked, is it concerning that Doug Nestor's not in the starting lineup? And I was like, it's great that Doug Nestor's not in the starting lineup. Because I think Nestor's a pretty solid football player and has a chance to be a really, really good football player. But look, it used to be Virginia Tech would roll out there, and I won't name any names, but everybody remembers these days where like 40% of Virginia Tech's starting offensive line was probably FCS level in talent. You didn't want them on the field, but they were starting and playing every snap. And even the other starters were kind of questionable to a certain extent, and throw in the fact that they were poorly coached. I mean, Virginia Tech's poor Logan Thomas, they almost got that dude killed half the time, and they got almost got some other guys killed too. And now I look. now I look at it and I'm like, man, some of those guys Tech were starting them. They wouldn't even be in the 3 deep now.
Yeah.
I mean,
they were starters back
They
then.
were starters. I mean, people expected Scott Loeffler to do something with that. He had guys who couldn't start for James Madison blocking for his quarterback. It was absolutely awful, the talent level. This is impressive. This is what Vance Weiss done. Or maybe it's not impressive. Maybe we're just not used to it.
Maybe it's what every offensive line coach should be doing. You know?
Right. I don't know, but I do think it's impressive. I feel very, very good about this group. That's all I can say. If they're all together, of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
Last point before we step aside for a break. Brock Hoffman listed as the starter at center. Of course, transferred in from Coastal Carolina, was not granted immediate eligibility. Will, how fired up do you think Brock Hoffman is to get out there and hit somebody on Saturday?
About as fired up as I am to see him do it. He made an interesting comment in the last media session. He said something about he thinks in the long run it was better for him sitting out last year. He said,
He's better to redshirt.
Yeah, how about that?
I read that and I was like, yep.
He says,
Most guys don't realize that until later.
And he, I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but he basically said, I'm a better football player right now than I would have been at this same point last year. Mm-hmm. So great to hear.
He talked about living with Braxton Burmeister. Burmeister's from California. He's taught him a different diet, so he's eating more vegetables, more things like that. And I can tell you right now, that makes you feel a lot better, eating the right foods. And,
I should probably do that.
I mean, it's easier to get out of bed in the morning. You just have more energy, all that stuff. So I think Hoffman has retained his size, 317 pounds. He's a weight room warrior, but now he's a healthier 317 pounds. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that red shirt year was great for him. I think this red shirt year is...
I can see Chris Coleman smiling through his mask
my mask.
See, now I'm getting all fired up. We're actually talking football.
No, think about it, man. This is, to a certain extent, like, there's only 2 true freshmen on this entire 2 deep for Virginia Tech. And
Chris is once again smiling for those listening.
They're both at the same position. And if it wasn't for Devin Hunter, whatever he did or didn't do, if it wasn't for Devin Hunter's situation, there would only be 1 true freshman on the entire 2 deep for Virginia Tech. We'd be redshirting everybody. It's kind of sad that nobody has to redshirt this year because this is the year of the redshirt. But at the same time, it could be kind of like a double redshirt because they'll be true freshmen again next year, right? Like you can play Lakeem Rudolph as much as you want this year and then redshirt him next year. Which some spots it's going to be a backlog of true freshmen. We're going to have like 6 true freshman defensive ends next year.
Wow.
And that's not going to fly, of course. Yeah. Some guys are going to not be here because of that. But
one quick thing I want to add, actually, in addition to the offensive line. Will, you've got Tyrell Smith listed as the backup left tackle, graduate student from North Brunswick, New Jersey. For those that might not know the Tyrell Smith story, just how long has he been in the program, A, and B, how good is it to have someone like him in the locker room?
He played 2 years under Frank Beamer, I believe.
Remember there was a Fab Five, the 2014 offensive line recruiting class, and then one of them decommitted and went to Ohio State, so it became the Fab Four, and he was one of the Fab Four. And
so Billy Ray Mitchell, Tyrell Smith, I don't remember the other 2 guys.
One of them ended up playing tight end some. Like they moved him to tight end for the Notre Dame game in 2016. And
Colt Pettit?
Yeah, and he played really well as a tight end in that game.
So Tyrell's still around.
So he was a recruit in 2014.
Yeah, he went to prep school after that year of high school.
That's right.
So then he enrolled in like 20.
I think he may have even gray shirted. Yeah, but
I don't know.
So I got into this discussion. This was months ago. Who's older, Justice Reid or Tyrell Smith? Because one of them, I think Justice Reid wished Tyrell Smith happy birthday on Twitter, and I said, "So settle this. Which one of you guys is older?" And I believe Justice Reid is older by probably about 3 months. But these 2 guys are old, man. And Justin Fuente said many times that he wishes he could just continue to keep the eternally eligible Tyrell Smith around. They really like him.
Oh, gosh.
Well, here's the thing. This year doesn't count, so he could come back next year. We could have 2 8th-year seniors on the roster next year, him and Justice Reid.
I think he's going to be 25 next year. I think he's 24 right now.
Oh, it's amazing. And it's amazing that there's still a Frank Beamer recruit and someone who played for Coach Frank Beamer still on roster in 2020.
Yeah, how about that?
We're going to step aside for a break here on episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. When we come back, we take a look at the defense, we get season predictions, and, of course, we get to your questions on Facebook Live while previewing the NC State game this Saturday. You're watching and listening to episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm. Welcome back, episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. So glad to have you with us, however you are listening or watching. He's Chris Coleman, that's Will Stewart. We've got Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. I'm Evan Hughes back with you. We're previewing North Carolina State, Virginia Tech in just a little bit, continuing to take a look at position groups. We'll get to the defense in just a moment, but when the Hokies take the field on Saturday, they're going to have to play hard, smart, tough football, and they're going to have to bring some grit to the field. Will Stewart, we've got grit gear all over the podcast, and the new t-shirt that you're holding up right now, look at that.
Pretty nice, huh?
It's a great shirt. So for our listeners, it's orange with white letters of grit right across the chest, maroon outline.
District brand, 100% cotton. Feels very soft. We haven't had a chance to try it on yet. Got it just yesterday. So if you go to the Tech Sideline website, hit the menu, do more, our sponsors, and look for grit gear, or if you're on desktop, their ads are plastered all over the place and you can find it easily. So hit those guys up and order some stuff. They do have it in stock. From what I understand, there were some difficulties getting to the production phase, but they've got stuff in stock now, and I think should be able to ship pretty quick. So check out Evan's hat there, Malcolm. Thumbs up. I like that. So the hats got swapped out. We had prototype hats, and that hat is more of a Virginia Tech maroon. I like that, and they have the black hat as well. So very cool.
Well, the black hat in front reminds me of the 2010 Nike Pro Combat uniforms that was worn against Boise State, a game that we will not talk about,
of which we shall not speak.
Will does not. Yes. So, anyways, our thanks to Grit.
Yes, and also shout out to Tony Roby's Southeast Regional Training Center. Check out southeastrtc.com. And for the first time ever, we are going to start talking about Campus Emporium stuff on the podcast. So Campus Emporium has been a sponsor for a long time, and I can be a little slow in the uptake. I finally hit him up and I said, hey, the stuff that we're featuring on the website, because we do a different featured item from Campus Emporium each week, give it to me and let me wear it on the podcast. So what you're seeing here is, let me read the exact name of it. I'm sorry for the audio people, but listen anyway, because you should go check this out. This is a Columbia super slack tied camp shirt that I'm wearing. All right. So it looks like a party shirt, right? Kind of looks like a Hawaiian shirt like you wear to a party. So I get this thing in and I start looking at it, and it's actually a Columbia PFG shirt, which is their performance fishing gear line. So this thing is vented in the back. It's got mesh. So what I'm saying is this shirt is here to party and it's here to fish. So you can fish all day and party all night in this shirt, although you should probably shower after fishing. But it
looks comfortable.
It is
by the way,
bizarrely comfortable. You know, it's you can barely tell it's on. So this is a quality piece, $65 from Campus Emporium. So go to their site and search on camp shirt by Columbia, and it'll come right up. You'll find it really quickly. And I think that's all I wanted to say about it, other than it's awesome.
Will's also got jeans on, a nice watch. He's got the nice shoes. I mean, he's
got
the get up.
I wore the Vans because I thought they go with the party look on the shirt. So,
folks, before the podcast, sometimes I'll look over to Will's desk here. That's off camera, and changing out shoes. I mean, Will comes prepared for these Tech Sideline podcasts, as does Chris Coleman. Let's get right back into it, and let's take a look at the defensive line for Virginia Tech.
Hey, now wait a minute. We got to do the song lyric. We got to see if anybody got it.
I was going to say that for the end, maybe with the Facebook.
So Malcolm, did anybody get the song lyric? He's scrolling up through the Facebook feed.
Yeah, Eric Fisher and Joshua Odie got it.
Josh Odie. Josh, what's it like in England right now, buddy?
Paul Thammasek got it.
All right, so tell the fans what it is.
Stacy's mom.
Stacy's mom has got it going on.
I
God,
definitely
I
heard the
love
song.
that song, and I can't believe I missed that.
Yeah, it's from 2000. You would have gotten it if I had said the lyric as, I could tell she liked me from the way she stared, and the way she said, you missed a spot over there. You would have gotten it if I'd done it that way.
I would have gotten it
my-
if you sang the lyrics.
I was listening to that song yesterday. That is brutal that I could not.
Oh
pull that
man,
off.
you
I
heard it
mean,
yesterday. I didn't recognize
It's on my
that.
playlist. I just
You missed a
sometimes
spot
the way
over
it's read.
there.
Great song.
Yes.
Song.
A lot of fun. 2003.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, there we go. There's our song. Great to have that back with us here.
Should we do
on
the trivia
podcast.
also?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go ahead.
All right, so this is random. Who is the shortest scholarship player on Virginia Tech's football roster? Shortest scholarship player on Virginia Tech's football roster.
I'm going to use this depth chart.
He's cheating. And I discovered this because I went and I looked at I finally put the 2020 roster on the Tech Sideline website. It's under the football menu. And you can sort on all of the column headings. So you can sort by number, name, position, class, which is very cool for seeing how many true freshmen and redshirt freshmen.
Can I guess?
But you can also sort by height. So I just clicked on the height and I was looking and I was like,
I'll guess Taj Gary, 5'8".
ding, ding, ding. Taj
that's
Gary, 5'8". There's a couple guys who are 5'6", who I believe are both walk-ons.
Yeah.
Taj is 5'8", and then there's a 5'9", probably several 5'9" players. Yeah, like
Oh, yeah.
Herbert
both
and
these running backs. Yeah.
Herbert and Blackshear are both listed at 5'9". But Taj Gary is all alone at 5'8".
Congratulations, Taj.
We've got it all. We've got the song lyric. We've got trivia. We've got a great show. We've got football this weekend. It's great to just sit here and talk football, as Will said a little bit earlier. So let's dive right back into it because I'm just eager to talk about this defensive line. You brought him up, one of the older players on the roster, Justice Reid. He's one of the coveted grad transfers that Virginia Tech had in the offseason. He's from Clearwater, Florida, 6'3", 255. He's the projected starter at left side defensive end. Deshaun Crawford, a defensive tackle. Nose tackle, Gerard Hewitt. And right side defensive end, Emmanuel Belmar. Will, I'll give you one word to describe Tech's two-deep defensive line. What word would you use to describe it?
I need two words: getting deeper. So getting deeper as we go along, and not even listed here is Robert Wooten, who has gotten good reviews.
Amari Barno's not listed.
Amari Barno's not listed. So those are two guys that you could see. I guess the fact that they're not listed on the two deep says you might see them in spot duty, certain situations, particularly Barno. But that's how I would describe it, as getting deeper. And let's see, you got a graduate there, a senior, a redshirt senior, and a redshirt senior. So they need to keep stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Give me one word, Chris. How would you describe it?
I would say experience. You got a seventh-year senior at one defensive end spot, a fifth-year senior at another defensive end spot, and they're both backed up by fourth-year juniors. And then you've got a fourth-year junior, Amari Barno, in there, even though I wouldn't call him experienced because he's playing his fourth different position in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But Crawford and Hewitt are both seniors. Pollard and Kendricks are true sophomores, but they got a ton of experience last year. So overall, this is a very, very experienced group. I feel better about it if if Ty Garbett was back, because DeBose missed last season with that torn Achilles, and it's hard to say how effective he can be coming off of that. But I'd prefer to be a little bigger at defensive tackle, but I will pick guys who can play any day.
Yeah, we already know
just
Deshaun
size.
Crawford can play,
Right.
and
Right.
Gerard
Well,
Hewitt.
we know they could play in Charlie Wiles, Bud Foster system as far as what they ask defensive tackles to do. We don't know for a fact that they're a great fit for what Tech wants to do now. We don't know that Tech is going to do defensively like what they really want to do, or how much is going to be adjusted to the personnel that they have. This is
the beginning of a process, I think, for Justin Hamilton.
Correct. It really, really is.
And you hate to be there in the fifth year of your head coach's
I
tenure,
know, and
to kind of be starting over on one side of the ball.
it's you replaced two legends in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
It's tough for any fan base, right? So I'm happy for Justin Hamilton, and I also feel horrible for him because I've seen some of the stuff Fuente takes criticism for compared to some of the stuff that Beamer didn't take criticism for, and I'm like, man, I hope our fans go a little easier on Justin Hamilton than they've gone on Justin Fuente for Hamilton's sake. But at any rate, I feel pretty good about this group, assuming they're all healthy, not quarantined, COVID-free.
Sure.
All those qualifiers.
Well, for a first-year defensive coordinator, he's got to love that he's got production back in his linebacking core, including Rayshard Ashby, Dax Hollifield, Alan Tisdale, the linebacking core. Will, I feel like last year we spent so much time talking about how deep the receiving core was last year and the linebacking core. Do you still have that same feeling towards them this year in the linebacking core?
I do, and let's toss something out there that I think has been figured out, and Chris can back me up on this. You got Rayshard Ashby at Mike and Dax or Alan Tisdale at backer. And I think the question has been answered, what if something happened to Ashby? And I think it's been answered that Dax would slide down to the middle.
Yep.
And that they would play Tisdale at backer. So Fuente talked about this. Didn't he say Dax has been practicing some at Mike?
Well, he had to because Ashby was out. Yeah.
Dax flat said there was one day where he went into the meeting room and he was the only guy allowed in the building at the linebacker position.
So if this lets you know how difficult it is to hold a practice, just imagine. All right, you need 2 linebackers just to field a starting defense, right? Well, Virginia Tech had 1 linebacker.
I tried to picture Tracy Clays and Dax Hollifield in the room, and that's it.
Oh, man.
I don't know. If I was Clays, I'd enjoy that. Because as I've said, Dax is a football meathead. I'm sure that was a lot of fun.
How would you describe Rayshard Ashby to somebody who's never watched him play before?
As a guy who
I would say
never guess was a
look at the numbers,
right.
And I don't mean his height and weight.
Right.
In 40 time.
Yeah, like he's like the linebacker version of Derek Hopkins.
Yeah.
I remember shortly after Derek Hopkins, his career was over. He was in the parking lot of the spring game, and it's like him and Tyrod Taylor and Devon Morgan were all tailgating a couple spots over from me before spring game, and Hopkins. Like Tyrod and Morgan look like football players. Hopkins, you would never have guessed would have been an all-ACC defensive tackle. He was like 5'11", 300 pounds. You just never would have guessed it. And Ashby's kind of like that as a linebacker.
He is the only Virginia Tech player that was voted first team all-ACC in the preseason, correct?
That's correct.
And, I make this point over and over. This is not getting selected first team in the mid-1990s where there are 8 teams in your conference. Mm-hmm. Particularly this year, there's 15 teams in the conference.
It means out of 15
guys.
Right. Well, honestly, yeah. There's more of it than. I guess they put 3 linebackers on that team, and they don't think about whether inside linebacker or outside linebacker. But whatever. I didn't look at the voting breakdown, but it's one of the. Out of 40-ish starting linebackers in the ACC, he's considered to be one of the 3 best, which is very impressive.
All right, let's transition to the secondary. That was supposed to be headlined by a potential top 10 pick in Caleb Farley. Of course, he declared early for the 2021 NFL Draft. So, the secondary without Caleb Farley, how would you describe it, Chris Coleman?
Thin. And actually even thinner than this depth chart implies, because I've heard. I wrote this an article a couple weeks ago, so I'm comfortable saying it now. I've heard Jermaine Waller hasn't practiced at all, still suffering from that foot injury that he got before the ball. In fact, I've heard.
Now, to be fair, we heard hasn't practiced at all like two or 3 weeks ago. We heard that. We're not sure about.
No, I heard it again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I heard he hasn't practiced since the bowl.
Yikes.
Since before the bowl. So, he's not playing, in my opinion. So, you're going to have Armani Chapman in one spot and either Breon Murray or Devin Taylor at the other. Okay. So, for last year, Virginia, and this is another reason I hate this year for Justin Hamilton. His first year as Tech's defensive coordinator, he was supposed to have the 2 best cover corners in the ACC. And now he's got neither one of them, most likely.
And 2 of the best cover corners in the country, really.
Right, exactly.
If you go by PFF grades.
PFF, yes. Yeah. And, all you got to do is watch him play. They were 2 of the best last year. And now he's not going to have either. Now he's out his starting rover on top of that. So it's just not – it hasn't set up well for him, and that's unfortunate. I also feel bad for Ryan Smith, who comes to Virginia Tech from JMU, assuming he's going to be coaching the 2 best cover corners in the country, arguably, and now he's coaching neither one of them.
Yeah.
Right? So But that said, I mean, I thought Armani Chapman was very good as a redshirt freshman last year. We now know why Virginia Tech jumped all over Devin Taylor so quickly. Now that I know what I know about Waller. Thank goodness Virginia Tech started recruiting JUCOs again, and they could bring in Breon Murray, before last season. Otherwise, they'd really be in bad shape right now at the cornerback spot. I think they'll be pretty serviceable there. I think Shamari Connor's really good. Divine Diablo, if he can just get consistent, I'm not asking that he be a star. Just you don't know which Divine Diablo to expect. He was really good against Notre Dame last year and a couple of other games, but then there were others where you're like, I just don't know what the scouts see because he had an awful game. Yeah. I'm not asking him to be a 10 out of 10 every game. Just get me a solid 7 out of 10 performance on a weekly basis. And I really think that would go a long way towards solidifying things in the secondary if he can get consistent. I really like Keontae Jenkins long term.
Let's talk about that rover spot real quick, Will. So Keontae Jenkins looks to be the replacement for Devin Hunter at the rover spot. He's a freshman from Jacksonville, Florida. And then you've got Lakeem Rudolph, freshman from Virginia Beach, right behind him at that rover spot. How important is it now to have guys like Diablo and other guys in that secondary step up to help that position with some youth there?
Wow, it's something that I didn't grasp until just now looking at the depth chart is it's rover, and Rudolph's listed at 6'4", and Jenkins is listed at 6'3".
Yeah.
Those are tall guys. Do you know right off the top of your head what Devin Hunter was?
6 foot.
Wow.
On the dot, yeah.
And typically your rovers have been...
Reggie was 6 foot too.
Yeah,
or 6 foot also, excuse me.
Not that
not
tall.
6'2".
Now, they're only listed at 215 and 195 respectively because, they're freshmen. But Chris and I were watching film of... So first of all, Rudolph, I remember last year when he was recruited... They thought they'd gotten a steal, that they thought he was a guy who was lightly regarded that they think can be a good player.
Remember, Rudolph was in a car accident.
Yeah.
And during the recruiting process.
Yeah.
And that
will derail
your recruitment, yeah.
But we were watching Keontae Jenkins' high school film yesterday, and man, he hits hard. He closes fast, sideline to sideline. The physical talent is there.
And he was in Jacksonville, Florida, too. Yeah. It's not like he was in some place college scouts don't go.
Yeah, so Chris is a little mystified by how he was relatively lightly recruited because the film is good, the size is good, and the physical talent is good. So, what will happen probably if he has to man that starting spot all season long is that things will start to show up on film where you can take advantage of him because he's learning the position.
Right. That
might not be obvious to NC State first time out of the gate, or they may decide they are going to pick on him. It's just hard to say because there's just no film on Virginia Tech out there.
It's okay that he's at Rover. You can hide an experienced guy at Rover as long as the guys around him play well. Like Reggie Floyd, 2017. Reggie Floyd's best season was as a sophomore because he was surrounded by great players. I mean, Edmonds was playing free safety. Stroman, 2 NFL corners, 3 NFL corners if you count Adonis in there. So you can kind of hide Floyd. If you had Farley, if you had Waller, and if you could convince me that Diablo was going to be consistent, I'd feel fine with Jenkins at Rover because I know he'd have really good players around him. We could hide him a little bit, but there's too much unknown here. But no, I'm a little bit concerned, to be honest, because we're going to play more zone, in my opinion, under Justin Hamilton. Zone is about – it's kind of like playing quarterback. It's about being in the rhythm. It's about getting used to the playing next to the guy. It's like, okay, so you're a cornerback. You got to get used to playing next to that rover or next to that free safety because you pass off guys in coverage as one guy moves from your zone to the other zone.
It's like zone blocking on the offensive line.
Right. You've got to be in sync. Your timing has to be really good. And with Virginia Tech's, the choppiness of Virginia Tech's practices, taking 4 days off, sometimes guys are there, sometimes guys are not there. Guys who were expected to be on the team are not on the team. Devin Hunter suspended right in the middle of practice, basically, and Jenkins getting thrown into the fire. So you've got there's no way that secondary has been able to get into a rhythm or get used to playing with each other. I think Shamari Connor and Devon Diablo, both playing together on the wide side of the field, should be very used to playing next to each other, but everybody else is not, and that's a major concern. Major concern. And, I think we've seen some defenses in the ACC that's shown up. With pass defense.
There's a lot of points being rung up against bad coverage
now,
and bad reads.
The other side of that is, I watched, when I was at the gym last Saturday, I watched the Oklahoma State Tulsa game, and it was like 3-0 late in the second quarter. That's Oklahoma State and Tulsa.
I think it was 7-3 going
that game,
the fourth quarter.
That game wound up 16-7. It wasn't a high-scoring game.
And that's shocking. You expect those two teams to both score 50 points, right? So I don't know. We'll see. But that is a concern. I will say at least we're not opening up against Trevor Lawrence or UNC or somebody like that, because I think it's less likely that Bailey Hoffman lights Tech up through the air. Yeah. So Tech is not getting off to – they're not facing a juggernaut in the passing game to start off with, and I think that's a good thing.
Let's go ahead and –
So one last thought about Keontae Jenkins. I thought one of the things that Reggie struggled with at times was run fits, reading where the run was going and making the proper fit, and that led to some big plays. If Jenkins is better at reading the run, from watching his high school film, he certainly looks physical. If he's better at reading the run and being in the right spot, that'll help. But then you get into the passing game issues that Chris just discussed.
Quickly, don't want to spend a ton of time, but you've returned Brian Johnson, redshirt senior kicker, and you've got senior Oscar Bradburn at punter, John Parker Romo, kickoff starter. Holder will be Bradburn. Shadley's back as the long snapper.
Oh, yeah.
Senior.
Yeah, I think that's
except for Shadley, who's a junior. Yeah. So you could, look, they're seniors, but you could have them back next year. You're going to be super seniors next year.
Just a quick thought on the special teams. You guys feeling good about all the returners?
Feel great about the kickers. Feel great about Parker Romo. He got a scholarship for how well he prances. We're doing his kickoffs.
Boing, boing, boing.
But no, he's great. Impressive that he was able to step in as a punter at the last second for Bradburn last year. I know Fuente loves to point that out. Love Robinson as a punt returner.
And then Keshawn King at kick returner.
Like Keshawn King at kick returner, but if he's so small that if somebody catches him wrong, he's also got
how big is kick returner anymore? Like, not hardly any kicks get returned.
Yeah, yeah. But honestly, and something that makes it more important. You get so few opportunities. You might get 2 chances every 2 or 3 games to actually return a kick. So you want to have somebody there who can actually potentially turn that into a big play.
You are right, though. Kick return is certainly over the years.
I'm worried. You're right.
Become
right.
less and less
important.
Critical,
absolutely. That's why I used to hate it when like Tech used to blow red shirts on. Like they blew like Devin Hunter's red shirt and Dylan Rivers' red shirt when they were true freshmen, playing them on the kickoff team, and they just sit there and watch Joey. They just jog down the field and watch Joey Sly's kick sail through the end zone. Oh, there goes your red shirt. That was ridiculous. Now at least we don't have to.
Don't have to deal with that.
Or at least the 4-game rule helps as far as that goes. Yeah, but overall, on the whole, feel great about special teams.
Feel good about special teams. We're an hour into the podcast, and we got to talk about North Carolina State. Wolfpack coming off a 45-42 win against Wake Forest in their first game of the season. They ran for over 200 yards. I know that's something that Justin Fuente brought up in his press conference
270
on Monday. Yeah, they absolutely ran the ball really well. So, Chris, given everything that's going on with Virginia Tech, their first game of the year, what should we expect from the Wolfpack? Have already played a game so far this year.
It's hard to say. Like my suspicion is that Wake Forest isn't any good this year. I'm shocked at
except for Boogie Basham. He's good,
right? I'm shocked how well they played offensively, considering they lost their NFL quarterback and their NFL wide receiver. But on the whole, I think their defense is bad. So I don't know fully what to think of NC State. I do think their running backs are good. Person, Zonovan Knight, Jordan Houston. Tech recruited Knight, I believe, to a certain extent. I really wish they had gone all in on Jordan Houston from Northern Virginia, because I think he could really help Tech a lot.
He looks good, yeah.
Trent Pennix is a guy who I think would be playing H-back for Virginia Tech. He's a redshirt sophomore running back at NC State. actually started a game as a true freshman as a tight end a couple years ago because NC State was out of tight ends. But this was a guy Tech offered. If you look at 247, he's actually predicted 100% to Virginia Tech. And then he's from Raleigh, went to NC State. Tech didn't know whether he was going to be a running back or a wide receiver. So they didn't. I don't think they really went all in on him. But I wish they had, because I think he'd be helping us at tight end now, in my opinion. But I look down their roster and I see some names that I recognize, like those guys I just mentioned. Ely Mcneil at nose guard came down to Tech and NC State. He was from Raleigh. He was 275 pounds when he was recruited. Now he's 6'2", 320. The ironic thing is, he really liked Charlie Wiles, and Charlie Wiles and I also thought that Ely Mcneil was a great fit for Virginia Tech's system. I thought he'd play at around 295 pounds, had that twitch, all that. Now, as it turns out, he is playing for Charlie Wiles, but he's playing in a completely different system. This is 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs.
3-3-5. Is it called that the stack? Is that right?
It can be, yeah. That's what Rich Rod ran back in West Virginia back in the day.
Offenses.
But yeah, sometimes look, I'm sure sure one of these linebackers maybe can line up as a stand-up defensive end or one point. Who knows? But anyway, it's first-year defense. Because they fired their defensive coordinator, brought in a whole new defensive coaching staff, as we saw. As 2 of Virginia Tech coaches are now on this staff.
Mm-hmm.
Peyton Wilson was a 5-star linebacker that Tech really wanted. I believe he was committed to UNC at one point and then decommitted to go to NC State. So I like Peyton Wilson.
Yeah, I'm a Peyton Wilson fan.
Exactly. I don't think it's a good defense on the whole. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think Wake should have lit them up like they did. Now, it's fair to say that a few weeks ago, NC State was in a position that Tech is in now, right? So we don't know how much practice who was had. We do know they finally got their full team back
and played a game
early next week.
At the time that they postponed the game with Tech, I think they had 45 guys available to practice,
right?
And they were up to 105 like 2 weeks ago,
right? Which means Tech will be fine like 2 to 3 weeks from now. Here's the problem: Tech actually has to play games, and NC State spent most of their time not having to play games when they had all their issues. Yeah, so it's hard. I think if both teams were, I think that 11-point opening line is completely fair if both teams were at full strength. Like I would pick Virginia Tech to win this game by double digits and probably fairly handily. But that's not the situation.
It's not the situation, but we're not going to do season predictions. But I am going to ask you, Chris Coleman and Will Stewart, to close a game prediction with a score.
Oh, gosh, a score also. I'm not confident, to be honest with you. And I would encourage people, don't get angry about this game, whatever happens, because Tech is not ready to play.
Yeah.
We kind of have to play. At some point, you have to play for TV revenue. And I'm guessing the ACC is sharing all revenue equally, but the more games don't get played, I'm guessing that's the less money that ESPN transfers into the ACC's bank account.
Again,
right?
I've never seen anything written about this.
Correct.
What is happening, not just the ACC, but around the country, what is happening?
Well, I'll tell you what,
TV
ESPN's not going to pay for games they're not getting.
Not broadcasting. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So you got to start playing them. Like Notre Dame canceling this weekend, that costs everybody money. Right, that's just the way it is. So at some point you got to start playing.
So a couple things go through my mind. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to get a couple things off my mind. I don't think Justin Fuente really wants to play this weekend.
I wouldn't.
But I think if you wait, it gets even worse. You fall
exactly.
further behind. I think he understands that he's going into battle. Half man. He's outmanned. But I think he also feels he needs to get his team on the field and start playing some football.
I think they're going to get some guys back this week, some key guys, as the week goes on. Guys that maybe if you were opening up against Liberty, you're like, okay, we won't play them because they're not ready. But I think they're going to play them against NC State. But I don't think there's a good option. You either play the starter who hasn't been practicing or or you play the backup who's not as good, who has been practicing, right? I think that's okay at certain spots. I think that's okay at quarterback because I think Braxton Burmeister's good. I don't think you can do that at like wide receiver or defensive end or some of the other spots on this team.
Yeah.
So I'm going to choose. That's just how I think I'll feel. I don't know how I'll feel in the heat of the moment or the next day. What I'll try to do is like there will be positive moments in the game, and that's what I'll hang on to. Not to the final score, but this is probably not going to go well for Tech. 31-20 NC State.
I don't even really want to make a prediction. I mean, I'll kind of agree with what he said with the
And
general
rightfully so.
gist of it, you know, but nothing would surprise me.
I agree. I would not be surprised if Tech won, but we don't even know who's been practicing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's hard enough, quote unquote, predicting things, and this year it's even harder, you know. So another comment that went through my head which has nothing to do with this particular game, but watching television the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, I felt like when the Big Ten and when the Big 12 and the ACC were basically the only two conferences playing early in the season, I thought that would lead to increased exposure for the ACC, and it really didn't. Yeah, ESPN, ABC made the decision to put a lot of ACC games on the ACC network, even to the point of having Sunbelt games on at night on the main ESPN channels, while there's a good ACC game on over on the ACC network. So,
and of course, it doesn't help that Tech and UVA, which was supposed to be the night game, the nationally televised game, doesn't get played.
But that got replaced with Miami and Louisville.
That's fair, yeah,
you know. But I just didn't see I made some crazy statement on the boards like, man, you're going to see Duke and Wake on ABC or ESPN. No, there were actually good games in the ACC that they shuffled over to the ACC network. And supposedly that was part of some strategy to pressure Comcast into coming on board, blah, blah, blah. You know, but of course, if you look at this weekend's listings, ABC, ESPN, all day long is SEC, SEC. Every SEC game.
Are we on the ACC network?
I was about to say,
week?
Tech North Carolina State, 8 o'clock kick on the ACC network.
I'm ready for some tack glasses commercials.
And it's a great crew. We've got Dave O'Brien, Tim Hasselbeck, and Katie George. So
met Tim Hasselbeck at the Belk Bowl last year. Really nice guy.
Yep, I think he's terrific in his analysis too. So looking forward. Dave O'Brien's a great play-by-play guy as well. So
Hasselbeck, we talked about this on one podcast. Hasselbeck told me that he lifted weights with Fuente. They were here for a game, and I guess he worked out with him, you know. And we were kind of talking about how Fuente is in front of the press, and Hasselbeck's like, well, I worked out with him. You know, and if you're working out with him, he opens up.
I was about to say,
of course.
I feel like that's a great way to gain trust, media, coach, work out with somebody.
Dude likes to work out.
Yeah, he does, man. The results are like, you know.
I don't know how I don't know if like any of his players. I don't get the sense that like any of his players are scared of him. Like he's a big guy and he seems kind of foreboding and everything like that. But I think maybe he should be a little meaner to him because I think some of them would be scared of him. I mean, he can outlift most of them.
I asked him in one of the earliest press opportunities last year. I lobbed him up a softball. I was like, Coach, you know, you're definitely looking a lot bigger, more buff, man. So tell us about the workout regimen. And he looked at me like I'd grown another head. He's just not a guy who can, again.
He was surprised at the question.
Yeah.
Speaking of questions, the best producer in the land has waited an hour and 16 minutes to get to him. He is Malcolm Stewart. I'm curious to know what questions we have from Facebook Live and comments. We covered a lot of ground today, episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. So, Malcolm, what you got for us? What's going on?
Now, wait a minute, Malcolm. There, you got to do the floating head. He had been avoided doing the floating head recently, I think.
We'll start with Dale Kaiser. What teams have impressed you, and what teams have been a disappointment so far in the ACC?
Well, I wouldn't say that Florida State has disappointed me because I'm never disappointed when Florida State's not good, but they're a disappointing team, I would say. Georgia Tech, considering they have a true freshman quarterback, I know they got smoked pretty bad in the second half against UCF, but I think they're on their way forward.
Yeah,
now, granted, their one win is against Florida State,
Again, how do you interpret NC State and Wake? How do you interpret
right,
Georgia Tech and Florida State?
Like NC State, it was impressive that they could win a game against a team that had already played while they hadn't played, but at the same time, I just don't think Wake is any good this year. So I think it's too early to tell. It's especially too early to tell since you don't even know what guys have been available. Like, we've heard somebody on our board is pretty well connected down in the Chapel Hill area, and he's heard that UNC had a bunch of guys out back when school opened up, and remember they shut down their program around the same time NC State did, but they weren't playing a game, and they had the luxury of playing a bad team in week 1. So
I'm drawing a blank. Who was it?
It was Syracuse.
Okay. Oh gosh.
I mean, UNC could send half their team up there and get an easy win over Syracuse. The Syracuse just isn't any good. But at any rate, it hit UNC in the preseason, right? And they had time to get over it. If it hit them right now, they'd be taking the criticism right now. Yeah. And Virginia Tech would not if the school openings had been opposite. So I would be tempted to say that UNC looked disappointing in week 1, but I'm using them as an example of it's not fair to say who's been disappointing and who hasn't so far because you don't know which guys each team has had available to practice. Like if UNC got hit hard around when NC State did, that means they had half their team out for 10 to 14 days. And so they went, but they still played in week 1, right? So they weren't ready to play Syracuse, and that's why they didn't look good for the first 3 quarters. That's possible. So I don't think you can really judge too many teams this year because you don't know. Now it's important to say that, and I think a lot of Tech fans will say, we'll say that for other teams, but when Virginia Tech looks bad this weekend, they're not going to let it be an excuse. They're going to be like, oh, yeah, you fire everybody, right?
So I think Miami's look pretty good. Clemson's Clemson. They look great. Yeah. Syracuse is they're falling off the cliff. Interesting stat about Syracuse: they gave up 44 sacks last year, which I think was last in FBS, and they have given up 14 sacks in 2 games. So their offensive line is a mess. The defense has gotten a little better.
Defense has been.
They're under a lot of pressure. Other teams I can't really judge all that much. I was surprised that Duke played as well against
Notre Dame. They're 0-2.
But then Duke looked bad this past week against Boston College. Boston College handled them easily.
I'll go ahead and say I think the dark horse in the ACC is Pitt. I mean, I get it. Austin Peay, they won 55-0. They beat Syracuse 21-10. I think that defense is legit. And I tell you what, if Kenny Pickett's play well, I'm telling you.
Their defense is definitely legit. Their defense was legit.
I think the defense is better than last year. Already off the.
Well, I think it didn't have to get better. The defense didn't have to get better. It was always good enough. Can they run the football?
Yes.
Because and they could not last.
They could not run the football a lick last year.
I'll go ahead and say this. They play Louisville at home this week at noon. I'm taking Pitt to beat Louisville. I think they're going to move to 3. And I'm telling you, I think the Panthers are going to be a team to look out for in the ACC.
So watching Louisville and Miami, there are some players on Louisville's team that scare me. That quarterback scares me. And the
Cunningham?
And the running back Hawkins, is that his name?
Don't know.
I can't remember, but man, he's scary. But yet Miami handled him fairly easy. Not those individual guys. They handled the Louisville team fairly easy.
Well, they scored a bunch of points.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
Louisville's defense.
Yeah.
Oof.
What else you got for us, Mal? Good question. I appreciate it because ACC's been fun to watch this year. A lot of stories.
All right. From Justin Thomas. After listening to Coach Fu's optimism during Tech Talk Live, what is the probability we play Saturday night?
I think we said 75%. I said 75% earlier.
Trending in the right direction.
Yeah. He's always positive around Laser because him and Laser are friends and they get along and everything like that. Yeah. So listening to Fuente on Tech Talk Live is a lot different than listening to Fuente on his normal Monday.
His body language on the Monday press conference was poor when he was talking about our chances to play, and then Monday night he's all upbeat with Laser. So it may just be the venue.
Right. Oh, he's one of those. He's honestly the guy's just like me. Like I'm not comfortable around somebody unless I really know him. Nah. Right. So he's very, very comfortable around Laser.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Any more, Malcolm? I know you said we had 2.
I think that's it.
I'll go ahead and close with one final question. I know we're running a little long, but a lot to get in before the game on Saturday. Charlie Wiles returns to Lane Stadium. We had hinted at it a little bit as the defensive line coach for North Carolina State. He's been with the program since the 90s. How weird will it be to see Wiles coaching against Virginia Tech?
It'll be awfully strange for sure. I mean, let's see. Think about it, man. 1996. From 1996 through 2019, he was Virginia Tech's defensive line coach. Bud Foster's entire tenure is full defensive coordinator. And Bud's first year, 95, as co-defensive coordinator, it was Todd Grantham as the defensive line coach. So every single year, Bud served as Virginia Tech's defensive coordinator in full. Charlie Wiles was his defensive line coach. That's incredible to think about. There just hasn't been that many partnerships like that throughout the history of college football. I guess it's no real surprise that it ended so abruptly when Bud retired. But everybody who's ever met Charlie Wiles likes Charlie Wiles. Yeah. He's a guy who's great for chemistry, funny guy, always in good spirits. Dave
top-notch dude. Yeah, Dave Doran said words to the effect of Charlie lightens up the room.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
He probably brings something to that coaching staff that they didn't have. I mean, Doran's a pretty – I haven't watched him a lot, but every time I see him, he's very even-keeled, somber's not the word I'm looking for. Serious is probably – so I'm sure Charlie brings some stuff to that coaching staff that they didn't have. I think Charlie's more old school. I think you're more modern coaches. Charlie came along when there wasn't that much money in coaching.
Yeah.
But you look at the guys today who are coming along today, there's a huge amount of money in it. There's an immense amount of pressure. So I just think as a group, they tend to be more serious about what they do.
Charlie probably started when he probably was making like 50 or 60 grand when he first started coaching.
Well, I know that when Ricky Bussell came and went as offensive coordinator, and who's the guy that was Gary Tranquil. When all that was going on, I remember reading Hokie Huddlers at the time. Those guys were offensive coordinators, and they were only making 65 or 70 grand a year.
Oh, geez.
In the early
so, Wiles was making like 50.
50 tops, 45, 50 grand a year.
Yeah.
You got into coaching because you liked it and you enjoyed it. Right. You didn't get into it because there was a crap ton of money, and you didn't have the pressure because the avenues to apply pressure were just not as numerous.
Absolutely.
The fans might call into the radio show and criticize, but that was it. You didn't have social media bearing down on you and all that sort of thing. Sorry to go on.
No. I think it's a great way to wrap things up. And when I've asked this question in the past, sometimes we don't really know, but we do know we have a game this week. So Chris Coleman, that means there's got to be a game preview coming up on TechSideline.com. Yes. So what do we have coming up?
I started taking notes on it yesterday. I'll write it this afternoon. It'll be ready to run tomorrow. What else do we have coming up? Friday Q&A. Gosh, I can't remember.
We should probably run VTEM Hokie 85's trailer on the site.
Oh, yeah.
So for people that are not on Twitter and Facebook who haven't seen it, he's got his annual trailer. We should toss that up there.
It's kind of hard for me to, I did see that he posted it now that I remember, and I didn't watch it because, every Virginia Tech football trailer, it heavily involves the crowd and Enter Sandman and Lane Stadium and how loud Lane Stadium is and all that stuff. And it's just not going to be this year, is it? So,
yeah, I've watched Tim's trailer, and I believe it's got a voiceover speech. I think it's The Rock. I don't know what movie.
Right.
But I don't remember seeing a lot of crowd type stuff. So he may have adjusted for that.
Right. I guess
I'll go take another look.
You kind of have to this year because there's.
Yeah, you can't emphasize that part of it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we nearly went 90 minutes, so thanks for going a little bit long. Certainly a lot we got through today with
Position
all these
previews
notes.
do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And football is back, and again, Virginia Tech, NC State, 8 o'clock kick on Saturday in Lane Stadium. We'll have a full breakdown next week on the Tech Sideline Podcast. Gentlemen, any closing thoughts before we sign off?
Let's just get a game in. Let's get this thing going, man. And I think Fuente feels the same way. I think he hates going in with one hand tied behind his back, but I think he knows he needs to.
I think playing this weekend, short term, it's going to suck, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Long term, it'll be better for us than it would be if we waited yet another week.
Well, maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe they'll go out and he'll have some stuff for
correct,
NC
because
State.
as I said, I don't think NC State's very good.
And Fuente teams tend to come out of the gate pretty good. Not all,
Well, they do that because they've had they know who they're going to play, and they spend the off-season game planning for Florida State. I mean, this is their third different opener this year, from Liberty to NC State to UVA, and now NC State again. And they spent a lot of their offseason preparing for Penn State.
Yeah.
So, originally were they going to play NC State at all this year? In the original schedule? I don't think so. So they didn't spend any time in the offseason preparing for this like they have their openers in the past.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, again, be sure to check out Chris's game preview and everything on TechSideline.com. That'll do it for us. Episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. For our managing editor, Chris Coleman, our founder and general manager, Will Stewart, the best producer in the land, Malcolm Stewart. I'm your podcast host, Evan Hughes, saying so long. Thanks so much for watching and listening to episode 135 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, brought to you by the Fisher Law Firm. Enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you next time. Hokies, have a great week.